Hello Math 2 students, and welcome to your first Ed Puzzle of 2021, so that's pretty exciting. Alright, so we're going to go ahead, I did post the notes on Canvas, so go ahead, print those out if you want to, but you could easily just do this on paper. Make sure you follow along, because you're going to be given an assignment with questions just like this. So we did review this last semester, so this shouldn't seem too new. Basically, we're evaluating functions, and then we're going to practice coming up with the equation of a line. All right, so first it says determine the value of a if y equals 3. So what they're telling you to do is they're saying, well, y is equal to 3. So that means that we're allowed to go into this equation, and wherever we see a y, we're going to plug in a 3. So let's go ahead and plug that in. We've got a is going to be equal 2, and then instead of y squared, we're going to put a 3 because y is equal to 3. So we're going to say 3 squared, and then we're going to say plus 50.1. All right, now you're allowed to go ahead and just plug this into your calculator. All right, so we're going to do 3 squared plus 50.1, and you end up with 59.1. You could also just do this in your head, right? Because you end up with a 9 plus 50.1. So you get a equals 50.1. All right. So it's important that you understand what they're asking you to do here. They're asking you to figure out what a equals if y is equal to 3. So you're just plugging that in. Next, we have that function notation. Now, we did talk about function notation, and I kind of want to review it. So we have our f of x, right? This is our input. And this is our output. Whatever that equals, that's your output. Okay? So keep that in mind, right? And essentially, right, it's going to be x, comma, y, right? So it's going to be x, comma, whatever your output is. Whoops, I can't spell. Thank you for telling me how to do it. I already know how to do that. Well, we'll just erase then. It's all good. All right. So if we look here, they're telling us that our x value, or our input, is going to be -9. So we're going to go to f of x, and wherever we see an x, we're going to put in a -9. So our x is right here. So we're going to put in -9. So we end up with f of -9 is going to be equal to -9 plus -9 all over 9. All right. So we get -9. Now, again, we could just do this on our calculator, I guess. I'll do it by hand first, and then I'll show you on the calculator. So you get -9 plus, and then -9 divided by -9 is going to be -1, which is the same as -9 minus 1, which should give us -10. So our final answer here should be that f of -9 equals -10. All right, and we could check that on our calculator, right? We could plug this into the calculator. So let's try it. We'll do -9 plus, and then you should be able to do a fraction. Let's see. Oh, never mind. -9. I'll just do it this way. Plus, I'm going to do open parentheses, -9 divided by 9. All right, because that, whenever you have a fraction, just use parentheses to put it into your calculator. That works for a TI-84, a TI-30. Parentheses should just kind of be your go-to. There is a way to put in a fraction on a TI-84, and I can show you that if you're ever interested. But just with kind of across the board with calculators, it's good to put in fractions with parentheses. So we do that, and we get -10 as our answer. Perfect. All right. So now let's go ahead. We will try the next one. It says, what is the equation of a line that passes through the points 10, 1, and 5, -8? All right. So we did this last semester. And some important things we need to remember here is, well, in order to come up with an equation of a line, we need slope and a point. Okay, so first thing we need to do is calculate the slope. So the formula for slope is y2, oh my goodness, Bear with me here. My new Apple Pen is in the mail, so I'm writing with my finger. Y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So that's how we find the slope. All right, so let's go ahead. We're going to label these. We'll say x1, y1, x2, y2. Keep in mind that these are coordinate pairs, and coordinate pairs are always written as x, comma, y, right? And what these subscripts mean is that this means that they come from the same coordinate pair. So x1 and y1 come from the first coordinate pair, x2, y2 come from the second coordinate pair, all right? So now we can go ahead and plug that into the formula. So we get negative 8 minus 1, right? Because we're going to do y2 minus y1. So we get negative 8 minus 1. And then that's all over negative 5 minus 10. All right. So negative 8 minus 1 gives us a negative 9. Negative 5 minus 10 gives us a negative 15, which we could reduce this down to, what, 9 over 15, which would give us 3 over 5. Now, let's say you were like, I don't want to do that in my head. You could just do this on your calculator, but just make sure you use parentheses, all right? What I really recommend doing is doing the top part and then the bottom part. So you could just do, negative 8 minus 1 gives us the negative 9 on top. Negative 5 minus 10 gives us the negative 15 on the bottom. And then what we can do is we say, well, what is negative 9 divided by negative 15? And it's going to give us a decimal. But what you can do is if you go to math and click fraction, it's the first one. So you just click math and then enter. It's going to give you a nice fraction. It's going to reduce that fraction for you. So you end up with 3/5. So that's our slope, okay? So now we have to use what is called point slope form. All right. This is very important, and I would write this down. Point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right. And basically, you need to plug in your slope. And then you're going to plug in a coordinate pair, okay? You do not plug in for these guys. Okay, you plug in the yellow and the purple guys. You do not plug in for the X and you do not plug in for the Y. Those need to be in your final answers. All right, so what we're going to do now is we are going to plug in a point and the slope. Now, again, this should be reviewed from Math 1 and also from what we did last semester. So let's go ahead. We're going to plug in let's pick our point here. Let's see, 2. Let's do x1 and y1. We'll pick our first point there. So my 10 is my x1, and that needs to go there. And my 1 is my y1, so that needs to go there. So now I'm going to plug all these in. I get y minus, and then my y1 is 1. So I get y minus 1 equals, and then I've got my slope. Oops. Right, because that's your m, and our m was 3/5. So we're going to put in a 3/5 times, and then we're going to do x minus, and then we got to do our y1, which in this case is going to be 1. All right, so we've gotten this far. We're doing well. So now we're going to go ahead. This is still in point slope form. What you're going to want to do, though, is get this into slope intercept form. Okay, so this is point slope. I'm going to give you what slope intercept is. Which is y, equals mx plus b. right? Where this is your slope and this is your y-intercept, okay? So we could go ahead, we're going to distribute this. We end up with y minus 1 equals 3/5 x minus 3/5. And then we just got to get the y by itself, right? In order to get into this form, we need to get that y by itself. So we're going to go ahead and move the 1 over. Now, 3/5 or negative 3/5 plus 1 might be difficult to do in your head. You can just do it on the calculator. So we'll say, in parentheses, negative 3 divided by 5. That's our negative 3/5 plus 1. And if that gives us a decimal, I'm just not a huge fan of decimals. I like fractions. So I would say 2/5 here. Let's say positive 2/5. So we'll say plus 2/5. And this would be your answer there. All right. So that is how you would come up with the equation from 2 points. So the first step is to find the slope. And then the second step is to plug the point and the slope into point slope form and then solve for y, which is what we did here. A lot of steps there, but you guys can do it. All right. So the next thing we're going to go over is finding the equation of a line from the graph. All right. So when we're looking here, let's worry about getting this into y equals mx plus b. Now, when you're given the equation of a graph, there's kind of two ways you could solve. You could either go right into y equals mx plus b, or you might have to use this equation, the point slope. Oops. Now, the easiest way is to use this one, but you can only use this one when the line goes through the y-intercept, okay? In this case, it does go through the y-intercept, which makes our life a little bit easier, all right? So we look here and we're like, well, we got to come up with the slope, all right? So how do you come up with the slope of a line? You could count it, and if you feel comfortable counting it, go for it. But I'm going to be honest, a lot of people get really confused when just trying to count from looking at it. So let's go ahead and actually calculate it from 2 points. All right. So we'll go ahead. This first point here, the coordinates are -1, -3. And then we'll do this second point here. We will do 0, -4. So let's go ahead. Let's first get our slope. All right. So again, for slope, we're got to do y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So we can go ahead and label this. We'll make, we don't want to use that color. We'll say x1, y1, x2, y2. All right. So let's say -4 minus -3, because we're going to do y2 minus y1. So you've got -4 minus -3 all over 0 minus -1. x2 minus x1. All over 0 minus -1. So again, you could do this on your calculator. Just make sure you plug this in right. Now this right here, so many people make errors with this. It's minus a negative. So really what that is it's -4 plus 3. But you could just plug that into your calculator. Let's say -4 minus, notice I used a minus sign, minus -3. Two different things on your calculator. The minus and the subtraction sign are different. So we do that and we get -1 on top. Oops. And then on the bottom, we've got 0 minus -1 is going to give us a +1. So -1 divided by 1 gives us a -1. So that's our slope. All right. So we could go ahead. We've got our m, which is -1. Now in this case, we can go straight to this orange equation. And why can we do that? Because we have the y-intercept. Our y-intercept is -4. So we could just say y equals -1x minus 4, because that's our y-intercept. And typically in math, we don't write negative 1x. We should just write negative x. So that would be the nicest way to write your answer for that one. All right, so we're getting there, guys. Now, for this last one. Now, I specifically went and found a question like this because I wanted to make sure you guys understand how to do this. For this first one, we were able to go right to this orange equation. And why were we able to do that? Well, because we had the y-intercept. Now, there's going to be some times when you don't have the y-intercept. I see a lot of times on the SAT, you either don't have a y-intercept or just your scale is really off. And it's honestly better just to pick 2 points and come up with the line. Okay? And we just did that here, right? We had 2 points and we came up with the equation of a line. That's what we're going to do here. We have to use that second equation because we don't have our b value, right? The b value is the y-intercept, and that's where it goes through the y-axis. This line eventually is going to go through the y-axis, but it isn't shown here. We don't know where it hits the y-axis. So what we need to do instead is come up with our 2 points. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 4 will be our first point. And then our second point here is going to be 3, comma, 1, 2, 3, negative 3. So you've got 1, 4 and 3, negative 3. So first thing, no, at this point, right, we've got our two points. At this point, we've got our 2 points. So we can go ahead and do exactly what we did here. Come up with the slope, plug it into point slope, and get our equation. So we'll go ahead, plug it into our equation. So let's figure out what the slope is. So our slope is going to be y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. And we can label them. We'll just say that this is x1, y1, x2, y2. All right, so we'll plug those in. So we get negative 3 minus 4 all over 3 minus 1. All right, and we could, of course, plug this in. So we get negative 3 minus 4, which is going to give us a negative 7. And we get 3 minus 1, which is going to give us a 2. So our equation here is going to be negative 7/2. Our equation, I should say our slope. Sorry. Then we're going to go ahead and plug this into our point slope form. All right, so we're going to plug our slope into here. And then let's go ahead, let's plug, we'll plug our x value right there and our y value right there. So we end up with y minus 4, because that's our y value, equals our m value, which is negative 7/2, times x minus, and then our x value is 1. And again, we're almost there. This technically is an equation of a line, but typically we want to get it into y equals mx plus b. So in order to do that, we got to solve for y. So let's go ahead. We will distribute. We'll go ahead and distribute this. So we get y minus 4 equals, and we get negative 7 over 2x. And then we get plus 7 over 2, right? Because if we do negative 7 divided by 2 times negative 1, that's going to give us, well, 3.5, which is positive 7 over 2. Then we can go ahead to finish solving here, add 4. So we get y equals negative 7 over 2x. And then we're going to do 7 over 2 plus 4, which again, we could just do plus 7.5. Let's get a fraction here. We'll do 15 over 2. And that would be our equation.